The following program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Absolute Mortgage Company, NMLS number 81395 and Washington CL number 81395 is an equal opportunity housing lender. Tina Mitchell, MLO number 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit absoluteloans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information. You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell. Sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome to the Money Hour at 11:50 and KKNW, the Saturday, August 8th show. I am your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell. I provide you news on everything money, fresh information on market trends and conditions in our local economy. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. But I'm here to answer any questions or connect you with the guests that I have on the show today. Please call at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And my lineup for the show today, I have Anton Cauthorn with Rehberg Law Group. What estate planning mistakes should you avoid when owning real estate? Also, I have Andy Landitz, nationally known author and speaker, and it's been reported that 6.5 million Americans aged 112 or older still have open Social Security accounts. Kind of surprising. I don't really think there's that many people out there. Well, you'll find out when we talk with Andy. Last guest in studio, Gary at Castle with Mountaintop Advisors. Are investors investing in the bond market, stock market, and what about real estate investment trust? How do you get those? We're going to be talking with Gary about that. All regular contributors of the show. Really excited that I'm only the only girl in studio today. Just a bunch of guys in the studio, so it's pretty awesome. Great information and great guest on the show today. For more information on any topics discussed, please again call into the show at 1-855-400-1150 or online at moneyhour.com. And today, as always, let's start out with a little money chat.
Money.
Sometimes I talk about mortgage, which is my expertise, and sometimes I talk about other people's arenas. But today we're going to stay in my arena and talk about mortgages. I want to talk about creative financing, or I should say a little bit out of the box that you may think would have some challenges, and just understanding how the mortgage industry works, and to know that it isn't always a no because of the fact that there are alternative options. And here's a question that you really want to look at when looking at your mortgage professional. Make sure that they are direct to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Ask if they have any overlays to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines. Do they have access to government financing? And do they have a portfolio channel? So outside of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, if there are sometimes overlays where lenders will put additional regulations and rules on top of what the secondary Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have set up. So that's why you want to avoid that. Government financing, making sure that they have access to FHA, VA financing. Portfolio channel is just where things are a little bit out of the box that they might be able to put it in and hold instead of selling it on the secondary market. So that's what I want to talk about today. There are more than one way to skin the cat. So let's first talk about self-employment. If you're in the industry, understand mortgages, you may think that you have to have 2 years being self-employed in order to get a mortgage. That is the standard requirements, but that's actually the requirements through Fannie Mae. Freddie Mac does not always mirror Fannie Mae, vice versa. Sometimes they have different guidelines that they have. Freddie Mac actually allows, if it goes through the automated system and gets an accept through what they call LP, for 1 year, you only need 1 year tax returns. So if you just started a business, that can be really helpful for you. What if you took a loss in 2013 or took a loss in 2014 and you've got an extension now to October to do your taxes for 2015? You want to strategize a little bit differently on how you file your taxes for qualification for mortgage. That's an opportunity if you only need 1 year self-employed. So something to look into if you've been turned down for a mortgage because you don't have 2 year full tax returns for your business. Pick up the phone and give you a call because there is options available. Now, new employment during closing. If anybody's out there listening to the show right now and you're in the middle of closing on a home, and you're having some delays or issues because you've changed your job. Now, ideally, you're having this conversation prior to going under contract, but a lot of times consumers don't understand what they can and can't do during the process because they were not educated during the process of what to do. So if you're out there and you are in the middle of employment change right now and you've been asked to delay the closing because of that, you should not have to if you've got a lender that can actually hold the loan before it's sold onto the secondary, and if they have a portfolio channel that would allow for to do that. So if you have standard guidelines through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is that you have 1 month recent pay stubs in the file prior to closing. But if you have at least a signed contract and you've started your new position, you can get around that. Now, if you're going with government financing, FHA financing, not VA, if you're going with FHA financing, you actually don't even have to have started your position. You just need to have that offer letter. And I should say not contract, but offer letter. It's going to be really specific on what type of employment. I mean, you can't go into a position to where you're a contract employee. It has to be an actual employee of a company to where your salary. So some ways to get around that as well. No money for down payment, but you make too much for a grant. If you have a spouse that's purchasing with you, the most common grant program, or I think the best grant program that's out there that's available, their maximum income restriction is $97,000 a year. It doesn't matter where you're purchasing in Washington State, it's $97,000. So if you earn, as one of the spouse, $90,000, and then the other spouse earns $30,000, you are over that maximum $97,000. But did you know that you can actually, if you choose the right grant program, you can leave off the spouse that makes the $30,000 to now qualify, because it's not a household income, but it's an individual based on who is on the loan application. Now, you do want to talk with a real estate attorney, see how that's going to affect if you want to make sure you're taking title correctly. So I don't want to get into that piece of it, but I'm just on the financing piece of it, of a way to get into a program that might be something that you want. Now, what about too high of a debt to income ratio? You've probably heard me, if you're a regular listener to the show, you've probably heard me talk about the MCC mortgage credit certificate tax credit, a 20% credit that you have on your interest for the life of the loan. Qualification's a part of that, but I'm going to talk about the income qualification. Now, unlike the grant I just talked about, this is household income. So the entire household cannot make more than $97,000, depending on the county that you're purchasing in. So it's based on county on this program. But you want to make sure that your lender will actually utilize that 20% tax credit to go towards your income qualification, because not all lenders do. So there's some creative options around that to utilize that 20% tax credit for qualifying. Now, what about purchasing a property as an investment property? Did you know that you can actually use 75% of the potential rent income? You don't have to have a tenant. The appraiser is going to do a comparison to see what that market rent would be. And 75% of that can be utilized if you're purchasing an investment property. You do not need to have 12 months rental history in order to qualify for this. Now, you also, if you're buying an owner-occupied property and are having some challenges in qualifying, or a second home property, you can actually go in and purchase it as an investment property. There is nothing wrong with purchasing it as investment if you're going to be owner-occupying. On the other side, you cannot purchase an owner-occupied property if you're going to invest. Totally different scenario. But if you can't qualify as an owner-occupied, if you're purchasing it as investment property, now you can use that 75% of whatever the potential rent would be to offset the mortgage for qualification. What about spouse contributing towards the down payment if for some reason they're not going to be on the loan? You can utilize the spouse's bank accounts for down payment to purchase your home. Now, I'm kind of jumping around with some different creative and different options, because there are a lot of things that fit in one category that can qualify and come together in another category. So I'm just having you think about things that might come up that can be an option for you. Now, FHA government financing, a lot of lenders will have a 660 minimum credit score, maybe a 620 minimum credit score. Those are overlays. FHA is there's an actually low FICO score of 580. So if you have a 580 FICO score and you qualify for FHA financing, that's an option for you. Now, funds to close. There's a lot of challenges and inconvenience with paper trailing funds to close for that you're utilizing to purchase your home. Anything that comes into your bank account has to be verified and documented where those sources come from. Fannie Mae has actually just made updates to their guidelines and requirements that if it's under 2% of the purchase price, it doesn't have to be verified. That's going to be huge for some of you out there. Last one I want to go over before we take to break is more than 10 properties. So here's another common one, that thinking that you can't have more than 10 properties financed. You can. There's some alternatives and some options around that. Actually, I do want to touch on one more, condo occupancy requirement. Really common to think that you need to have a 51% occupancy requirement. So if you're purchasing a condo, 51% of the units have to be owner occupied. That is not the case if you're purchasing this condo as a primary residence. It's only if you're purchasing as an investment property that there has to be 51% owner occupied. So just some little teasers out there. There's many more. If you have any challenges with your financing, a call to action is just to pick up the phone and give my show a call. 1-855-400-1150. Again, 1-855-400-1150. Just run it by and see if there's some creative options out there for you. Coming up next in the Money Hour, real estate owned and estate planning, Anton Cauthorn with Rehberg Law Group right here at 1150 AM KKNW after the short break.
The University of Washington Parent-Child Study is looking for parents and their 8 to 11-year-old children to participate in a 3-hour research study examining how children learn to distinguish between what is safe and what is not safe. They're especially interested in how those processes differ in children of parents with and without post-traumatic stress disorder. Parents are compensated with up to $60, and all children are given a UW Child Scientist t-shirt. In addition, all parents receive a thorough psychiatric evaluation. For more information, please call Alyssa at 206-685-9043 or visit online parentchildstudy.com. That's 206-685-9043 or parentchildstudy.com.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 8th show, bringing in expert advice and inside knowledge on today's events in our local economy and how they can affect your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but you can always call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com to ask any questions or be connected with the guests that I have in studio today. And right now, we're going to be talking with Anton Cauthorn with Rehberg Law Group, estate planning tips if you own real estate. Anton, thank you so much for coming back in studio. Excited to talk to you about estate planning. Is one of those things that, well, there's a lot of things we do in our financial arena that we procrastinate, but I think estate planning is one of the big ones. So it's always a pleasure to have you here and talk about how my listeners can be safe and make sure that their estate is set up. So a little background about Anton. Anton's been practicing in the arena of estate planning and tax for 4 years and holds a Juris Doctor degree from the University of San Diego School and Law, where he graduated with honors and was a lead articles editor for the San Diego Law Review. In addition, Anton has a members of law degree in the arena of tax law with a focus on estate planning and small business planning. Anton is a member of the Washington State Bar of State and Gift Tax Committee and Q Law. Anton practice focuses on estate planning, estate tax planning, small business planning, and works with couples in non-traditional relationships and special needs planning. So talking today about the mistakes that can be made if you own real estate when talking about your estate planning. So what should you look for, Anton, for when your spouse passes away and you own real estate?
Thanks, Tina. This is one of the most common mistakes we see with real estate and doing estate planning. And there's a little myth out there that because Washington is a community property state, which means anything you purchase during marriage is going to be considered community property, that if your home is community property, then when you pass away, it automatically goes to your spouse. Mm-hmm. So a very common thing for us to see is somebody comes in, gives us a ring and says, well, I'm trying to sell my house and my spouse passed away 10 years ago, but now the title company is telling me I don't have clear title on the home. What do I need to do? Well, the mistake here was there wasn't a probate. There wasn't anything done when the first spouse passed away to transfer title to the surviving spouse. And that's one of the big myths. Even though it's a community property state, you still have to do something when one spouse passes away to transfer title to the surviving spouse. Otherwise, you end up in that situation where when you go to sell the home, normally about a week ahead of time, the title company finally does that title search, and you find out you can't sell, and now you have to go through a probate, and there's no way that's getting done within a week.
Wow, what a nightmare. I mean, it really is about the planning and understanding how you need to set things up. Now, Anton, what about owning real estate in multiple states?
Yeah, this is another problem that people often don't realize is a problem. So here in Washington, most winters are pretty bad and dreary, though this one wasn't too bad. But because of that, we have quite a few people who either, you call it snowbirding or sunbirding. They buy a piece of property down in California, Arizona, and they now have property in multiple states. Well, the issue is when somebody passes away, you have to go through a probate process in every state where you own real estate. So that means now you've got Washington, you have California or Arizona, and you're doing multiple probates. So what you've done now is created a mess for when you're gone for your beneficiaries, is maybe your children now have to settle probates in multiple states. Now, Washington's probates aren't that horrible. They're fairly simple. They're still complicated, but other states have even worse ones. California is one of the bad ones. So a probate in California can be very, very expensive. Mm-hmm. If you own a $500,000 piece of property, even if you have a $400,000 loan on that property, the value of the probate, the cost for the attorney's fees, is based off the value of the property without taking into account that loan.
Wow.
So you can end up with about $26,000 of probate fees with a $500,000 property. So it can be pretty complicated even in those situations.
So how do you fix that?
Well, the best way to fix this is by getting a living trust. It's the primary tool people use to avoid this probate problem in multiple states. So what they do is you get a living trust here in Washington, and then you transfer the property in California, the ownership, into your trust, or the property in Arizona into your trust. Now you can avoid the probate in every single state. And there's another way you can avoid these probates using something called a transfer on death deed. But not every state has these, and it's not always as clean of a tool. So the living trust is normally the preferred tool to avoid probate in multiple states.
And how do you advise that, Anton, when as a lender they're not lending into trust?
Yeah, so there can be situations where a lender may say you can't transfer the property into the trust. And there's a number of things you can do in those situations. The transfer on death deed is one solution. So if the state allows the transfer on death deed, you can do that. Sometimes people will do something called a pocket deed. They'll draft the deed, sign it, but they won't actually file it with the court. Okay. And so there's a number of solutions to get around this, but it depends on the specific state and the specific lending agreement.
Makes total sense. Now, what about a child? Should you put your child as a co-signer on the home to avoid probate?
This is another common mistake, and this actually has quite a few mistakes in it that people don't realize they're doing. And this one, we often see someone comes in and says, oh, I just want to add my child onto the home because I want to avoid probate when I pass away. Well, I always tell them to stop and think about it because you have a number of things that can go wrong. First thing you may end up having is a gift tax problem. If you put your child's name on the home, you're actually gifting them a portion of your home. So if you own your home with your spouse, and now you add your child, you're giving them an interest in at least 1/3 of the property. So now they're a 1/3 owner. That means you have to file a gift tax return your next year with your income tax return. So that's the first mistake. Next, you've also now made your child an owner of the home. So what happens if your child goes out and gets in a divorce? They get in a lawsuit. Well, the attorneys in that divorce or the attorneys in that lawsuit, they look for every asset that your child owns. So now they come back and say, okay, they own a portion of your real estate. We're going to pull that in the lawsuit, and you may lose your home because of your child's liabilities. That can be a pretty huge problem if you're trying to just avoid probate. Yeah. Now you have a lawsuit.
And then on the lending side of it, that co-signer, they've got issues in for qualifying for other things possibly if the mortgage hasn't been made long enough. And what happens if somebody can't make the mortgage payment on time? Then that child is responsible for that. So that's other areas of problem. Now, what about vacation a home? There's so many opportunities you just talked about. I mean, opportunities of buying properties in other areas, and you want to leave that vacation home to your family. What do you advise your clients to do in that situation?
Yeah, if you have a vacation property or maybe a property that's been in the family for years and you want to make sure it stays in the family, the big issue is you want to make sure you plan ahead. We often see people do nothing, and then what ends up happening is the children have to work together to try to find some way to keep that property in the family. Maybe one of them's being difficult about it, so they're forced to sell. Maybe they can't figure out how to pay the taxes, pay the fees associated with the property, and so they're not able to keep the property. Or maybe they end up fighting over who gets to use the property when. Because there hasn't been any planning done ahead of time, you can create fights and create a problem where the property has to be sold. Now, the solution is you can use something called a vacation property trust or a dynasty trust, where you take the property, put it into a trust, and you set up the rules on how do they keep the property, who controls it, who makes the decisions on who gets to live there, how do they pay the taxes. By setting it up all ahead of time, you can set them up for success rather than failure to keep that property in the family for years and years down the road. Though that also brings up a second problem. We have kids who come in and say, my parents set up this vacation trust, and we didn't really want the property. What we really cared about was visiting our parents when they were there. We didn't like the place at all. It was just that our parents were there. So now we have to go in, take apart the trust that was set up. So the second mistake to make with vacation home property is to create a vacation trust without talking to your kids ahead of time to make sure they really want that trust.
Got it. So really planning out ahead of time to make sure that everything is set up and everybody's in agreement and what's going to work. And what their needs are. What about timeshares? There's a lot of timeshares out there, opportunities, people getting involved in timeshares with real estate. So is there anything special that they would do in regards to that?
Yeah, timeshares are a special issue because many timeshares are actually deeded real estate, just like your home. And if you remember what I talked about before, if you have property in multiple states, you may end up needing a probate in every state. So say you have a timeshare in Hawaii, timeshare in Florida, timeshare in California. Now you have 4 different states where you need a probate when you pass away. So this is another one of those situations. Plan ahead. Put together a trust so you can transfer all of those properties into a single trust and avoid probate in every single state.
Wow.
Yep.
What about gifting property to your child to avoid estate taxes?
Yeah, one common thing we hear people say, I want to avoid estate taxes. I'm going to give my home to my child to avoid estate taxes. And the first question I ask is, how big is your estate? Because here in Washington, we have a $2 million estate tax exemption. If your estate is less than that, you're not going to have to pay estate taxes, which means you probably don't need to do gifting ahead of time. Second problem with this mistake is if you give away your home while you're alive to your child, that is now your child's home. If they decide to kick you out of it later on in life, they can do that. It's their home.
Wow.
So you're adding a lot of risk to your life and a lot of trust in your child for maybe minimal benefits of avoiding a $2 million exemption estate tax. So you want to be very careful and think about what you're doing before you gift that home to the child. There's also other tax implications for capital gains taxes. Normally, it's a bad capital gains tax consequence if you gift your home to your child, and you can actually end up paying more in capital gains taxes than they would have paid in estate taxes over the long run. So you want to make sure you talk to your estate planning attorney ahead of time before you go ahead and gift that property to your child to avoid the estate taxes.
Got it. Now, what about if you do have a living trust and you buy new real estate, you're adding to your real estate portfolio? What's your advice there?
Yeah, so if you buy a new piece of property,
because now there's a lot of buying a new pieces of property.
Yeah, so these days,
market.
The real estate market is very good. So people are purchasing new pieces of property, and the mistake to make here is not putting that property into your living trust if you have one. Because again, if you have a living trust, but your home is not in that trust, or you buy that rental property you're talking about, it's not put in the trust, well, now you end up having to have a probate for that piece of property that's outside the trust. So the mistake here is make sure you title that property into the trust when you purchase it. Now, if you forget, you buy the property and it's in your name, it's not all lost. You can go back, talk to your estate planning attorney. They can help you make that transfer, but it's easier if you do it right up front when you're buying the property. Make sure the name of the property is the name of your trust. Got
it. So, Anton, any other common things that you see in mistakes that people are making that you can share with my listeners?
Yeah, there's a number of other mistakes, but really one of the biggest ones we see is Medicaid planning. So people want to gift away their home to avoid Medicaid payback rules if they're going to go into nursing
care. You and Andy
care.
need to talk after the show.
Yeah, and so this is a common one. People think, I give away my home, I can avoid Medicaid payback requirements, and I can qualify for Medicaid. Big issue is there's a 5-year look-back period. You give away your home to your children to avoid these Medicaid payback rules, you may be disqualified for a long time because of the gift you made. Even worse, in some situations, the state will actually pursue an elder abuse claim against your children for these gifts if you later try to go onto Medicaid and they don't help you out at that point. So it's a pretty risky maneuver to transfer a home to avoid Medicaid payback requirements.
Got it. So if you're out there and you need any assistance in estate planning and really finding out what you should be doing to make sure that you're not making a big financial mistake for yourself and for the family that you're leaving behind, give the show a call, 1-855-400-1150, and I can connect you with Anton. Or Anton, how can they reach you directly?
You can reach me directly by calling Rehberg Law Group at 206-246-8772.
Anton, thank you so much for coming back into studio. It's always a pleasure to interview. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And coming up next on the Money Hour, zombie Social Security. What is it? Andy Landis, nationally known author and speaker, right here at 1150 a.m. at KKNW after the short break.
Have you been thinking about doing your estate planning for years but never gotten around to it? Do you have minor children and want to make sure you get to choose who their guardian is if you are gone? Do you want to make sure your family is left with a gift instead of a mess when you pass away? Is it important for you to know someone can be there to help you manage your life and finances if you are no longer able to care for yourself? Estate planning can help resolve these fears and give you peace of mind and control. Rehberg Law Group has been helping families like yours create estate plans and get peace of mind and control for the last 46 years. Our attorneys focus solely on estate planning so they can provide you with a comprehensive, personally tailored estate plan that fits your life. To start your estate plan and gain peace of mind, call Rehberg Law Group today at 206-246-8772 or read about us on our website, Rehberg Law. That's REHBERG Law.com.
This is Anton Cauthorn with Rehberg Law Group. If you'd like to reach us to set up an appointment, call us at 206-246-8772. Again, that's 206-246-8772.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 8th show. It's a great day to talk about money, and that's why I'm here with you, and is what the show is all about, how to make money, save money, and build a better quality of life for you and your family. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. To talk with the guests that I have in studio or any questions that you have for me, call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And right now in studio, my Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare expert, everything in that arena. He knows the answers. Andy Landis, nationally known author and speaker. And today we're going to talk about zombie Social Security. Andy, thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks, Tina. It's great to be here.
Little background on Andy. Andy Landis is our, again, Social Security guru. He is the author of best-selling book, Social Security, The Inside Story, called the Social Security Bible, available on Amazon.com. Andy travels the United States making a sense of Social Security. He has worked with pre-retirees and retirees for 38 years, first at Social Security, then at Boeing, AARP, Weyerhaeuser, and now as a speaker, author, and consultant. Read his blogs at the Wall Street Journal's Market Watch website. And he gets raving reviews because he makes Social Security clear and fun. And he lives here in Seattle with his wife, Kay. He lives with his wife, Kay, but he loves keyboards, camping, computers, cars, and sometimes you always love your kids, Andy. And I'm sure you've set them up really well in your estate planning as well.
It's true. We just did it about 2 years ago. Yay.
2 years, you need to have that looked at because you want to look at it every 12 months, right?
Wow, 12 months?
Right? Okay, maybe every 12, 24 months. So let's talk a little bit about zombie Social Security. Before we do that, let's get into zombies. Let's talk about Social Security and if it's going to be around. What's happening, Andy?
Yeah, compared to the rumors out there, it's good news. We just got a July forecast, the annual accounting of Social Security. Full solvency till 2034, which is a little longer than it's been in the past. And after that, 79% of benefits would be payable, even if Congress does nothing between now and then, which is, I don't know, maybe a pretty good bet. But their job in Congress is to come up with that last 21% of funding for the rest of the century. Otherwise, we're set for longer than a lot of people think.
So even though that we're hearing that Social Security disability is running out of money next year.
Oh, you said the magic word. Yeah. Social Security Disability Fund will run dry in 2016 if nothing is done.
Okay.
And there's a simple fix on the table now to just take the existing tax and reallocate a small portion of it back over to disability from the retirement side. You know, they've done that before and nobody even noticed. So it's the kind of thing that normally Congress would do without any hoorah.
So no real concerns there.
Not if Congress and the president do their jobs, but there's a little bit of concern about that, I guess.
Whole nother conversation.
It's a normal kind of accounting thing to do.
Yeah, got it. So let's talk about zombie Social Security. Can you explain to my listeners, Andy, what is that?
Well, it's a way to have your Social Security both alive and dead, sort of undead, the walking dead, call it what you will. And it's based on the idea that everybody says you should wait, maybe all the way to 70, to delay your Social Security. But you don't want to wait that long. So you want it to be dead in the sense that you're not taking it yet, but you want it to be alive, especially if you have a spouse. You want to have the spouse get Social Security even while you're waiting. So you want it both alive and dead at the same time.
Okay, so explain more why I would want to zombify my Social Security.
Well, you want it dead because you want a higher Social Security payment. You want to wait and wait, maybe all the way to 70 to get your Social Security. But you don't want to wait that long. But basically, you don't want to bring it to life because you want to wait. But you want it alive for your spouse. If you're married, you want your loving spouse to get Social Security spousal payments. Even if he or she is eligible for their own, you can get them on spousal payments. So to do that, you got to bring it to life. You've got to apply for Social Security, but you don't want to.
Yes.
So that's the problem.
A little bit of a pickle.
It's a pickle. So you're stuck between wanting to apply early for your spouse, but wanting to apply late so your own payment is higher.
So the solution?
The solution is to zombify it. You want zombie Social Security. So what you do is you apply for Social Security, but you suspend the payments. Now it's sort of in suspended animation. I just made that up.
That's good, Andy.
So by applying, it's alive enough to allow spousal payments, but it's dead enough that your own payments continue to grow.
Okay.
So you're getting the best of both worlds. It's undead. It's paying spouse benefits, so it's walking around.
Yeah.
But
oh my golly.
Even I'm kind of overwhelmed by this. But
this should have been our Halloween special.
This would be a great Halloween special, yeah. So it's a zombie, but I don't think it'll eat your brain, so that's good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So Andy, is there any fine print here? I mean, what do you need to watch out for?
There's a little bit. You can't suspend your payments until your full retirement age, which currently is 66. So anytime from 66 to 70, you can suspend the payments. And of course, if your spouse is going to file, he or she has to be eligible, which means they have to be at least 62. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And anybody can do this. Even a single has reasons to zombify their Social Security.
So what would be the reason for a single person?
There's a cool factor where if you choose anytime from 66 to 70 and you've already suspended your payments, you can say, boy, I wish I didn't do this, and collect all those back payments.
Wow.
Like if you ran into a cash crunch or you found out you had bad medical news and you weren't going to live long enough to make it worthwhile, you could just undo it and collect all those back payments.
So if there was something that happened with your marriage and you have an ex-spouse, any advice on that?
You could, if you're zombified, your ex-spouse can file on your record too. Whether you are getting paid or if they're in suspended animation, your ex-spouse. So if you have an ex, it's really important to know that you could file as a spouse on that record while your own payments grow to age 70. So that's a pretty cool, powerful thing you can do with your ex's Social Security.
Okay. Any other use for zombie Social Security?
Yeah, there is. First, you have to know what a dually is. And that's my own term for anybody who's dually eligible for Social Security. Eligible two or more ways. And you and I are both dualies because we're eligible as workers and we're eligible as spouses on our working spouse record. So a worker and a spouse is duly eligible. If you have an ex-spouse and you're a worker, you're duly eligible. If you, unfortunately, might be widowed, a widow could be a worker and a widow or widower, then you're a duly. So most of us are dualies. Anybody in a two-worker marriage is a duly. Anybody that's been divorced but married for 10 years, anybody who's widowed, anybody that has a work record and they have another work record to file on.
Okay. Anyway, are there any other things that are tying these two together, Andy?
Yeah, because you can file for Social Security on first one record and then the other if you do it right.
Okay.
So what you're doing is you're waiting on your own Social Security because it gets bigger and bigger until you're 70. But you want to get that spousal payment going earlier. And if you're full retirement age, currently 66, you could file as a spouse at 66 and get a small Social Security payment coming in, and then later take your own and get a big raise. And if you live long enough, and it's not very long, it's like to 83. If you live long enough, you're going to come out ahead. So it's really important for anybody who's duly eligible to understand that you could take first one and then the other if you follow the rules right.
Yeah. And just like anything else, Andy, I mean, you really, when it comes to our money and finances, you really have to understand what your options are because there's so many different decisions you can make, and you can make a big financial mistake. So, I mean, if someone's listening and wants more information on making sure they are getting things set up, where do they go?
Social Security is a good resource, but to get it all sorted out, you could look at my website, andylandis.biz, www.andylandis.biz, and you'll find books, blogs, videos to try to sort it out. And
awesome.
I think my book is a really good resource for that. Shameless self-promotion here.
Well, that's you should. It's an excellent book.
Everybody says it's the best one out there.
Yeah.
So, and that's the goal. So,
and Andy, what if someone's listening that, I mean, you go out and you speak with companies and really assisting and helping their workforce and getting things set up. So how can they contact you and get that set up?
Again, it's all on my website at andylandis.biz. Easiest way to catch me. My phone number, email, all that is on there.
Got it. Anything else that you want to share regarding Social Security, things for my listeners to watch out for, and anything that's changing right now that might be different than what?
No big changes recently. Everything's the same. But again, I would say Social Security knowledge is just part of your basic financial literacy.
Yes.
In the way that you have to know how to use a bank account or fill out a job application. You need to know the basics on Social Security. It's the largest source of retirement income. You better not ignore it.
Exactly.
So do your planning. Look ahead. Get the data you need. Get the data you need to do it right.
So, Andy, the most common mistake that people make when it comes to Social Security?
Probably filing too early.
Okay.
My blog this week will be on 5 bad reasons for taking it early. Reasons like, Social Security is going broke. I better get in there and get my money before it's gone.
Yes.
Well, it's not. There's no going broke on the horizon, so there's no reason to worry about that.
That's one. What's the second one?
I'll get more money if I take it early. Well, what you're doing there is betting that you'll die early because you don't have to live very long. By the time you live to average life expectancy, you'll get more money from Social Security by waiting till 66 or 70. Taking it early is not the pathway to get the most money.
Number 3. Oh, Andy, I'm put you on the spot here. What are those 5 reasons
Brain
that people
fade. Here, I've been working on that just this morning. How about this one? I don't want to draw down my savings.
Okay.
Because if I don't take my Social Security and I don't have my job anymore, I've got to hit my savings. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
it's really painful to hit the savings. Absolutely, I get that. But one thing that can help there, first of all, if you do the math, figure out how much your Social Security payments would be from, say, 62 to 66.
Okay.
If you're thinking about taking it early. Can you set that aside in savings? Just set it aside in cash to replace the Social Security payments. Talk to a financial planner, and you might find out you'll come out ahead by doing that.
Yeah.
And if you are blessed with large resources, let's say you have a large IRA, something traditional IRA, boy, there's some tax planning you can do around Social Security. If you wait till 70 on your IRA, you're going to have forced withdrawals, required minimum distributions, and the more money that's in there, the higher those distributions will be, and they're all taxable. So one idea, if it works for you when you do the math, is draw the traditional IRA earlier, postpone the Social Security. Now your required minimum distributions will be smaller tax bite, and your Social Security that kicks in at 70 is tax advantaged.
Wow.
So that may be a better tax plan for you to postpone the Social Security too.
And, great advice, Andy. And I just, if you're listening, really, you need to have what I call your wealth management team, everybody that is your experts in your financial planning, your estate planning, your tax advice, understanding how Social Security ties into every aspect and bringing your partners together. Andy, thank you so much for coming into studio, sharing your information. And I encourage all of you listening to get Andy's book and to go to his website with any questions that you have on Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Tina.
Coming up next on the Money Hour, how can you invest in companies that own commercial real estate? Well, you can. What are REITs? We're going to talk about that. Gary Castle with Mountain Top Advisors right here at 11:50 a.m. KKNW after the short break.
You bought it, but do you know how it works? We're talking Social Security, the biggest mystery in your financial blueprint. Now, move from mystery to mastery with the new book, Social Security, The Inside Story. Author Andy Landis has helped thousands of people just like you master Social Security.
Hi, this is Andy Landis. You can learn more at my website. Go to www.andylandis.biz. That's andylandis.biz.
The 1,200,000 women and men of Rotary have accomplished extraordinary things. They've taught millions of people to read, worked toward world peace, and have nearly eradicated a crippling childhood disease from the face of the planet. But each of those 1,200,000 women and men know they could accomplish so much more if only they were 1,200,001. Find out what an impact one person can make. Learn about Rotary at Rotary.org.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, October, oh my golly, August 8th. We're talking about zombies, and I'm thinking about October. It's only August 8th. I'm here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. We'll get to the October show in a couple months. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, you can call into the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com to discuss anything regarding money with myself or any of the guests that I have into studio. Right now, we're going to be talking with Gary Castle with Mountain Top Advisors on investing in low interest rate world. We're going to talk a little bit about how to invest in commercial real estate, how to participate in that. So great to have you back in studio, Gary. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, thanks a lot, Tina.
And a little background about Gary. First licensed in 1984, Gary's been in a high volume bank program and at very well-known credit union. He has a Series 6, 63 and Series 7 license in addition to being fully licensed for life insurance and annuities, both fixed and variable. So, Gary, we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of different things today, but right now I want to talk about the historical low interest rates and how is this affecting things with investors, what they should be doing right now with the rates so low.
Well, I think the main thing that you should be doing is kind of planning ahead. The Fed's talking about, Janet Yellen's just talking about possibly raising interest rates.
Yes.
They're at super low historic rates, and something's going to happen at some time. I don't know when. I
know. We've been saying that for the last few years. It's at some point in time in the near future, we have to see interest rates go up. So
exactly.
Yes.
So when that happens, it may or may not affect bonds or stocks, but it will affect bonds. Bonds are directly affected by interest rates. So what happens there is a typical investor could have as much as 40% of their portfolio in bonds.
Yep.
And it's like looking at a teeter-totter where you've got interest rates on one side and then you've got the value of your bonds on the other side. And if one side goes down, the other side goes up.
Yes.
And so that's what what they need to be aware of is that we've had interest rates going down and down and down, which has been pushing up bonds all this last 30 years.
Yes.
Yay. That's a good thing. But the opposite's going to happen when it goes the other way, and that's what people, I think, are kind of lulled into sleep and not maybe thinking about as much.
And so do you see your typical investor, a lot that are investing in the bond market right now?
Yes. It's not unusual to have a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks and 60% bonds, and they could be mixed up with all sorts of different bonds and all sorts of different stocks, but that ratio is kind of the golden ratio that's been recommended for a long, long period of time.
Yeah. So do bonds make you nervous? The stocks, I mean, what are...
Bonds are inherently very safe, and they produce a nice, consistent income. People like that. Because interest rates are low, they don't produce a lot of income. But when interest rates start to go up and you're holding onto a bond and you can now get a new bond with a higher interest rate, how are you going to sell your other bond?
Yes.
You're going to sell it at a discount. That's the only way you can get rid of it.
Yep.
And that's what people are going to be kind of shocked by. So
on the stock market, since it's at an all-time high, where are the buy low opportunities?
Well, to my way of thinking, the buy low opportunities, anytime you're looking at investments, you want to look at something that's got a very solid supplier demand driver. So when I look at the economy, one of the worst hit parts of the economy was construction. So during 2008, when the downturn happened, commercial building greatly slowed down. What that does is that leaves growing markets like, healthcare, senior housing, and maybe apartment buildings kind of way behind in their natural replacement. You need to replace those buildings. They get old, they wear out, and they're no longer Class A. They go to slip into Class B, or they go from Class B to Class C.
Sure.
So you just need to replace those, and you need to increase the amount of those in growing industries like those. So being a landlord, if there's a constrained supply, then you get to charge more rent.
Yes.
So then that's a pretty enviable position to be in.
Yes. So what about, Gary, with commercial real estate opportunities? Because a lot of people probably don't understand that there are opportunities. You don't have to have millions of dollars to get in to the opportunity to purchase or have a part of commercial real estate. Can you talk about that? Well,
sure. So before I talk about that, one of the things that happens is when we had a downturn in the amount of construction, a large part of that was due to the fact that banks weren't loaning.
Yes.
They already had a bunch of bad loans on their books. How they got there is history, but they had them, and they didn't want to go out and get a whole bunch of new loans for real estate. They already had plenty of real estate loans. They wanted to go loan on something else. So if you have a building for sale, a commercial building for sale, and somebody walks in and says, I'm a cash buyer, I don't need financing, you perk up, your ears perk up, and that's the person that can negotiate a pretty good deal.
Okay.
So, but you can get into, getting back to your question, the average investor, you don't need to have $20 million to go buy a commercial building. You can buy into a thing called a real estate investment trust, and it's a type of securities. And the minimums on those, a person could get in. Some of them have a $50,000 minimum investment. Some of them have a $10,000. Some of them even have as low as $2,000 if it's in an IRA type of account. So that's pretty easy to do.
So how does a real estate investment trust compare with the stock market? And is there an index to compare and see, kind of like the S&P 500 index?
Exactly. Yes, there is an index for real estate investment trusts. And if you go back, it's been around for quite a while. If you go back, Oppenheimer Mutual Funds as an example, they did a study. They wanted to know, hey, how good are these things?
Okay.
So back in 2013, they came out with their results of their study, and they said that if you took the average real estate investment trust and you compared it to the average of the stock market, which would be the S&P 500, and you mixed them all together, the real estate investment trusts as a group, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of them together, if you looked at it under a 3-year time frame, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, they outperformed the S&P 500. If you went even a little farther than that, 25 years and even 30 years.
So, Gary, if they're performing so well, why aren't there more investors that are investing in the REITs instead of the stock market?
I'm not sure. Yes. Nobody came to me from the big brokerage houses and said, Gary, we're not doing it because of this. We're nervous about this, or we just don't feel that people should know about these things. I suspect that it's a lot of it's fear. I know that the ones that are selling real estate investment and trust, when you go to a broker that's familiar with alternative types of investments and they're selling these things, very often they'll have restrictions on the percentage of a portfolio they can put into them. They might they're also going to have some extra disclosure forms because they're worried that they're going to get sued, that maybe you didn't explain everything or the customer didn't remember everything that you told them, and later on there could be a legal issue. So I think a lot of it's that. They're a little bit newer investments, and they'd rather let somebody else experiment first before they start promoting them, I'm guessing.
So who are you seeing that are investing in the real estate trust?
Well, real estate in general for commercial, where I see it's mostly people that are looking for income.
Okay.
So you buy into commercial property, and the idea is that you want income. So you buy the building and you're collecting rents. So the income seekers are looking for them, and it's also a good hedge for inflation. Later on, the building should be worth more.
Okay.
But the biggest adopters of real estate have been these large endowment funds. So Yale, Harvard, Stanford, they've got these large endowment funds. And it's the money that they operate, the earnings off of that is what allows them to operate as an entity and to offer scholarships to bright new students, which may end up later on giving them more money into the endowment. The people that are running these are pretty smart, and the people that are donating are pretty smart, and so they generally expect a pretty decent rate of return and some consistent results. So to use as an example, Yale News reported that their endowment had $23.9 billion in it. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
That's a lot of responsibility to not mess it up. And since 1985, what they have done is they reduced the amount of U.S. stocks by 92%. They reduced the amount of bonds and cash by 75%, and they increased their real estate holdings by 120%.
Wow. That seems crazy.
It's working. It's working really well.
Yeah.
Last year, they reported that they, over the last 10 years, had earned an 11% rate of return, and the average stock investor got 6.8%. So 11% versus 6.8%, that's...
So if any of my listeners, Gary, want to get more information on real estate trust, where can they get that information at? Real estate investment trust.
They can talk to their investment advisor. They can call me, but yes, they could call their investment advisor, and that's where they would get information about those.
Okay. Any other tips that you have, or what would be the concerns or things that somebody should watch out for in looking at investing in real estate investment trust?
Well, the biggest thing to be aware of is that a lot of these are illiquid investments. What that means is if you've got a mutual fund, if you've got a stock, even if it's down, you can sell it tomorrow and you get your cash out. A lot of these real estate investment trusts are not liquid. They generally pay a higher rate of return than some other things, but that's because of the illiquidity. You give up something on that end to get that higher return.
Makes total sense.
Yes.
So not something that you can just turn around, and kind of like your real estate property as well. It's a little bit different than just cashing in your stock. Any other advice that you have that is unique on investing in the real estate investment trust versus in the stock market?
Be very selective.
Okay.
There are some that look really wonderful, but you need to look under the hood and be very, very careful and have somebody who knows what they're doing kind of analyze them and look at them and Titan Securities, where I do all of my business, they're very, very good at checking those things out, and I'm sure some of the other brokers are also very, very selective before they'll allow something to go out in front of the public and possibly tarnish their name. So.
Got it. So whatever other advice are you giving your clients right now, Gary? I mean, in this environment and the opportunities out there, what advice are you sharing and helping your clients with?
I think the main thing is that I don't know when interest rates are going to go up.
Yep.
But if I'm a little bit early in giving somebody the advice to, hey, maybe it would be a good time to slip out of the bonds and move into something else that kind of acts like that'll give you income consistently and but doesn't have that interest rate risk, maybe jumping a little bit early wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Got it. And really just understanding again what your options are, what is available out on the market. Who knows what's going to happen with interest rates? Again, that's my arena in doing mortgages. But if you can anticipate what you think employment's going to do, it's probably a pretty good indicator of what interest rates are going to do, because they typically follow employment. And just as Gary was talking about, a lot of people don't understand how the interest rates work. They are directly tied to the bond. Fannie Mae 30-year bond is for mortgage interest rate. So what you typically see is if the economy is doing really well and we've got great economic news, then investors are going to be investing in the stock market because of the higher return. When there's some negative economic news that's happening, that's where investors get worried in the stock market, and they're going to pull out and go into the bond market. So mortgage rates being directly tied to the bond market, as the bond market's trading at a higher price, that's good for interest rates. When the bond market drops and trading at a lower price, not so good for interest rates. So, Gary, it's a pleasure to have you in studio and back again. I appreciate it. And it's always nice to have a little twist on investment and talk about something that a lot of people are not aware or that are out there. So thank you so much for sharing that with my listeners.
Sure, you bet. It's Alternative Talk Radio. Might as well talk about alternatives.
There you go. This is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And please remember, if there's any topic that you would like me to bring into studio, anything regarding money, that's what the show is about and why it's called the Money Hour. Every Saturday, right here on 1150 AM at KKNW. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
The preceding program is paid for by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Absolute Mortgage Company, NMLS number 81395 and Washington CL number 81395 is an equal opportunity housing lender. Tina Mitchell, MLO number 145420, is a licensed loan originator with Absolute Mortgage. Visit absoluteloans.com or call 888-90-HOMES for cost information.